Let's party to the rhythm of peanut butter and jam.
Hey guys, it's Aditya here. We're back with another episode of PB&J. So here we have Art from Vana. Art, you wanna introduce yourself? I know there's no need for an introduction, but still, go for it.
I think there's always a need. Hello everyone. My name is Art. I am the managing director of the Vana Foundation, one of the co-founders of Vana. We're a layer one for user-owned data. So what does that mean? It basically, data is the thing that fuels AI. All of our data is already used in AI. We don't get a say in that economy. We're here creating new economies with data as a new asset class in Vana. And there's a whole lot of complicated pieces that go into that, but basically think about it as people are making money off your data, and we want you to be able to make money off it too.
Got it. So that's a pretty interesting line. You want people to make money off the data, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, data has been one commodity in this space that's been pretty much a stable coin since the age of time. So it makes a lot of sense for you to kind of say that. So, but then recently there's been a lot of development, even in terms of AI and AI also doing a bunch of stuff with data. What's your take on, okay, somebody like maybe OpenAI taking a bunch of these data that maybe not in the most legal way and still kind of just rocking around with that data to train their models?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I actually come from a background of data brokerage. So one thing that is really not known in the in generally is how data is bought and sold and how this marketplace exists. Basically, there's like maybe 5 to 10 companies around the world that helps the large tech companies buy and sell data, and I used to work for one of them. And when you talk about, let's use OpenAI as an example. Where do they get the data to train their models? Well, they took the public internet, and so that was the first kind of level. So that's gone, and they wanted to make it better. So what did they do? Then they went and tried to get data from other places, and that's when they contracted it out to the company that I used to work for. They would get data from other platforms, they would get data directly from users, but they wouldn't tell them what it was for, and they wouldn't tell them what they were creating with it. And so in that economic transaction, your data might have been sold to OpenAI from another platform that's gone to create some of their models. And now OpenAI is making huge profits out of that. I think the last subscription was $200 a month for their AI model. And so your data has gone into that model, and your data has really improved that model and made it best in class, or one of the best in class, and you haven't been part of that transaction. And so I think the way that I think about this is that, I always go to these panels and ask who uses OpenAI, and almost everyone puts their hand up. And then I ask the second question of who owns OpenAI, and nobody puts their hand up. And it's like, well, that's a bit silly because all of our data has already gone into it. And this is just, and I don't want to shit on OpenAI. Like, I think that they do a great job, and this isn't just for them, but this is an example of how our data is just used without our consent, and we are part of an economic equation. So we are part, but not party to, an economic equation relating to our data. And if we can try to find a way for us to harness that power, we could create new economies, create new prosperity for the individual in a way that is only being really created by the already wealthy large tech companies that exist.
When you say create an economy, okay, so I like to think that crypto is the currency for AI. But at the same time, I also feel like when you take a look at the entire spectrum, the we are a small space when you take the whole Web2 landscape.
Yeah.
So what do you do in Vana to, I know you guys do a bunch with the small space that we have. You guys are the best, if not. So what do you guys do to bring like all of the other people, like something like what Base is saying, like bring people on chain? So what do you do over there?
I'll start with, why is it that my data on its own doesn't have economic value? Well, because I can't train a model with just my data. I can probably create a vector database, but I can't really create a model. Aditya, yours is the same. But if you and I combine our data, or if we combine it with thousands of other people, then we create an asset of immense value, and that's the data set that then you can use to draw inference or create an AI model. And so the real power that these Web2 companies have is the power to aggregate and structure data. But there's another system that can aggregate and structure data, and that's the blockchain. And so what we're basically saying here is that, wait a minute, the original promise of Web3 was the idea of trustless coordination. If we can do that at the data level, then we can start to create assets of value of which we each have a piece of it. So maybe a tokenized data set where we each have a token that represents our share of that data set. And now something that wasn't valuable before creates value because we've aggregated it in a community in these unions. So let's start from that point of like, in Web 2, this is impossible. In Web 2, only centralized actors can do this. And in Web 3 now we can do it. So how do we bring that to Web 2? Well, we're actually showcasing to people in Web 2, and we have thousands of people who've already participated in these data collectives, that they can earn money off their data in a way that they weren't really able to without a centralized provider in the Web 2 world. So we actually think that, we try to get all our friends into crypto. We're like, hey, come on, I'll transfer you like a few, for some USD or something like that, USDC or something like that. But now I can say to my friend, I'll be like, hey, just put your data into this data DAO, earn some tokens, start in crypto, start trading, start seeing the value of your data and experiencing it. That's on the supply side. On the demand side, we're seeing several Web2 data buyers being like, whoa, these are data sets that we've never seen before, because prior to us doing this, they had to go through these platforms or those brokers to get them, and now they can get them directly from the user. So I think the tool here, and the trick in Web3 and how we expand our industry, is to create tools that actually are additive to the world. And we think that Vana, on both the supply side and the demand side, is putting something differentiated out there in the world. And that's how I think about us kind of attracting the attention of folks outside of Web3. In fact, the majority of our builders are outside of Web3. A lot of our investors are Web2, Web3 adjacent. A lot of the people, I'm not like a Web3 native guy. I think that that's okay, because I see the value in what we're doing in this space as it relates to my project. And I think that that's more a genuine connection with Web3 versus like, we just want to launch a token to shill it.
Got it. Also, just coming back to that kind of question, when you said, right, you guys onboarded a lot of people in Web2.
Yeah.
What do you think about those people? Like, what are their mindsets? Like, do they actually feel like, hey, OpenAI has all of my data, like, and that's scary? Or are they like, hey, okay, just fuck that shit. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I mean, one of our early investors and one of our personal mentors, my co-founder and I, Packy McCormick, said that anger only gets you so far. So like, you have to convert that anger and outrage into something productive. So I think that, while we're all kind of pissed off at the fact that all these tech platforms are using our data, we're still on TikTok, we're still using Instagram, we're still doing all of this stuff. Why? Because anger only gets you so far. Our promise to the world is that, you can still use those products, but then also you can own your data and create different income streams from that data. It's not a either or equation, it's a this and. And I think that's really powerful for a lot of people who are like, well, I like using TikTok, I'm going to use it anyway. Oh, and I can also make money through my data that I use in TikTok. Brilliant. Awesome. So I think that the idea of like, how do we actually bring users on? Is it based on outrage? No, it's based on something of value. That said, the earliest and most successful data DAO that was launched on Vana was the Reddit data DAO. And that was a really interesting one, because that was at the moment in time when Reddit decided to sell Reddit user data to Google, I believe, for like $200 million or something. And the vibe on Reddit. The vibe on Reddit is not like, hey, we're going to contribute to Reddit so that you can sell our data. It's very the opposite of that. So we had a lot, like, that data that was started within a Reddit community that were like, what the hell's happening? Like, we need to come together. And it kind of just shows the power of community. We're seeing data DAOs crop up around these kind of niche communities, which I think are fantastic. Like, there's a data DAO that's focused on curing cancer because those folks have been affected by cancer. There are folks that are really interested in, I don't know, the way that Instagram influencers want to create a data DAO on themselves. Some people in different countries want to create data DAOs just for those guys. And so I've been surprised at how much like grassroots community support can create these new economic primitives. And that's where that's the area that I'm most excited about here in terms of like aggregating this data together.
Got it, man. That's a lovely answer. One more doubt that I had was, so I follow your content pretty much regularly on Twitter. So since we're moving past like a generative AI kind of time period and we're moving towards an agentic AI, you said in one of your panels on Denver that there are three things that AI agents should have in particular. One of them was creativity. The second one was
Yeah.
utility, and I think I forgot
Yeah.
the third one.
Yeah, so they need to be used for something. So it needs to like the AI needs to be useful in some way. It needs to be performant. So that's where the data comes in, and it needs to be creative. It needs to have an edge to it because we like creative things. Yeah, that it was. I feel like most folks in AI would be like, "Oh, that's this really stupid thing to say." Everyone kind of knows it,
Yep.
but I also think that like just need reminding sometimes that like AI is only as useful as it is useful.
Got it. Got it. Got it. I mean, it does make a lot of sense when you kind of think on it. But what do you think that? So, how do you think these models should be trained on? Because you also need human data to train these models. So, what would be the best way to kind of go about it?
Yeah, yeah, so it depends on the use case. I think we're kind of all caught up in this idea of AGI and these large language models. I'm actually more interested in small language models or niche models that work for a specific use case. And kind of, if we're thinking about an agentic economy, a lot of people, we have the tendency to put a human face to things because of our bias. It's studied in psychology. We put human faces to a bunch of things, and so when people think agentic economy, they think like virtual digital beings chatting with each other. But actually, if you talk to a lot of data scientists and AI folks, an agentic economy is just simply a bunch of algorithms that are working with each other to optimize different aspects of our lives. And so that's why I'm much more interested in that categorization of like what does the AI do, how good is it at it, and what creative spark does it bring. Really, and really kind of goes to the question of the data. So let's give it say the cancer data DAO. They don't want a general AI. They want an AI that's able to somehow detect and cure and create new developments to improve cancer patients' lives. And so they would want that's the thing that they're trying to achieve. So they would need something that AI actually does, maybe invents new drugs. Then they would want the AI to be performant. So they want the data set to be um, something that relates to performing well in drugs. So the data set they're actually aggregating is patient history for cancer patients, as well as drugs that they've taken, genetic material from those folks. That stuff is really cool because then it trains the model. And then the spark there is like, okay, so how do I package this up in a way that people understand it or our community understands it? And that one's easy for those guys because they all have been affected by it. So they don't really need to package it up in any way. So the training piece is really needs to correlate with the output of the model. We can't just be in this zone constantly of like let's just get as much data in and ram it into the model. I think we're starting to move away from that and say what is it exactly that I need this model to do, and how can I make it most performant with the most efficient compute and the best data.
I think DeepSeek has been a good role model in that kind of context.
Yes. Yeah,
Yep.
100%. Yeah, I think DeepSeek being able to create a very powerful model of a lot of data and less compute. I don't think they take the SLM or the MLM framework. They're still an LLM at the end of the day, but I think it's interesting to see that maybe compute isn't the constraint in AI. Where you saw what happened to Nvidia when that happened. So like I think maybe it's something else, and maybe it is human data.
Makes a lot of sense, man. But it's crazy, man. When you take a look into the entirety of it, you see data becoming more and more valuable to the point where you kind of ask this one question where it's like, what is probably your data worth? Which is not a question that people often ask themselves. And I know you have been asked that
Yeah.
question a lot of times, but
Yes. Yeah.
maybe shed some
Yeah.
clarity on that for the user.
Yeah. Okay. The analogy. I love analogies. I love stories. You remember when like society was like in the medieval times, like a feudalistic society? Yeah. Like you
Yep.
just like you've read history books about this. If you'd gone and asked somebody who tilled the land, like the peasantry, how much is your land worth? They would have been like, "What are you talking about? we just till this land and we give we pay our taxes, we give our food to the kings and the royals and whatever. And I think we're in the same state as it relates to data. People ask us we are those people. We're getting asked the question of what is our data worth, and we're like, what are you talking about? This thing has never had value. And post-feudalism, people had to grapple with the idea that land is of value, that labor and wealth is something they can create for themselves. And this is where I see us at Vana, where we're trying to revolution. We always talk about the data revolution. And it is that revolution where we understand that data is a new asset class and we start to develop value around it. So we may not have an intrinsic sense of what our data is worth today, but just like in feudalistic times, they had no sense of what land was worth. At some point, they did develop, and we do develop a sense that, that little plot of land is worth money. We are going to be doing that with data, and I think it's going to be much faster, whether it's this year or next year. We're going to start to develop marketplaces where we internalize that our data has value, and the whole economic structure of technology is going to have to adjust to this idea. One last thing is that you've seen my content. I'm very anti the current regulations around data because I think it keeps people really uninformed. Instead of treating data as an asset class, we treat it as a right to be protected, and nobody adds commercial value to a right. So I think that the tech companies have done a great job of making sure that we are unaware of the value of our data. And I think we need to actively move forward and have conversations like this so that we can start to draw that into our consciousness.
What is something that an everyday Joe would be able to do in taking a step forward in actually ensuring something like this happens in the future?
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do is just to educate yourself on how much data these tech companies have from you. So my ask for all of your listeners and viewers is to go to Google Takeout right now and you don't need to download your data, but just look at the data that they have on you. Look at the depth of that data and then ask yourself, wait a minute, if somebody has this amount of information and data on me, what could they do to me or using this data in relation to technology? So that's the first ask. Please play with your data. I don't even care about like monetizing or adding tokens or making it too complicated. Just start with playing. I started with like a Jupyter notebook and downloading my data. I started with downloading my Instagram data and seeing like what it had in it. Like that's how I got curious about this. So get curious, number one. Number two, if you're curious and a little bit, like what the hell, go to one of the data DAOs on Vana. You can find them at datahub.vana.org. And see if there's a data DAO that you can upload your data to, and start to experiment with the idea of getting some token reward for that data and what you can do with that. There are about 18 to 20 data DAOs that are officially deployed, several in the pipeline, but that's where I would go next. And then if your data set isn't there, go to docs.vana.org and apply to one of our programs, Vana Academy or Vana Grow. So that you can create the world that you want to live in and say like, hey guys, you don't have the TikTok data set up. I want to create that. And then we will in our ecosystem show you how to create this because we think it's important for society to have these data pools. So those are my main three asks. Go and explore, submit your data or create the world you want and spin up a data DAO.
Yeah, man, that's lovely advice. You guys better listen to this man here because this guy is he knows what he's talking about. So
I try.
So I'll tell you something that wonderful that we have also done here with this new product that we launched called Provider Hunt. So what we've done is, just over the past year, we've had so many of these data sources that are coming to us by the community and by the team as well. And even you guys played a huge part in it as well. You guys needed data from Twitter. You guys needed data from Reddit. So we helped. But the thing that kind of stood out to us was we had a lot of this data that was available. And there was no means for anybody to come straight ahead to reclaim and then kind of figure out, hey, these guys have everything available already. So which is why we kind of launched this product. So every single one of the data providers that we have, it is categorized by genre. It is all here. So you can look up anything so any data points that you want. So for example, if at Vana you are building like a data DAO for Twitter or for Reddit, and obviously Twitter API does not give all of that data because again creates a like decentralized problem comes into play again. and there would be some sort of certain data that you won't be to get. Come on to Provider Hunt. You can actually use any of the data providers that we have already, and yeah, it's you also earn money, which is the fun fact. We are
That's
incentivizing people to kind of come and share whatever data points that they have built. So I feel like more than getting people to kind of privatize and own their data, we've kind of helped them kind of take their data from like the off-chain space and bring it on-chain where you can keep it safe and do it in a privacy-preserving manner. So that's something that we have done here. So yeah,
really,
did want to, yeah, man. So this is something cool that we shipped as well because at
yeah,
any point of time, you're always a product that's going to be for the community. So
yeah.
you can never forget that, and people need
Yeah, and
a now.
yeah, and a huge shout out to the Reclaim guys because like a lot of our data does use their technology in order to prove that the data is theirs. As obviously, I've talked about it as a fairly simple process. It's not. What these guys do is fantastic because the trustless nature of aggregating data is not a simple problem, and so we partner with these guys because they help our data DAOs achieve what they need to achieve. And I love seeing stuff like this. Thanks, Aditya. This is great.
Yeah, man, for sure. I see time is wrapping up, and I know you're a busy man, but thank you so much, Art, for joining here, sharing all the in India we call it gyan, which is another word for wisdom. So
Oh,
you
thank
might have, yeah, yeah. Thank you for all the gyan. Pretty much, I'm pretty sure everybody enjoyed it, and I haven't checked out Google Takeout myself, so I'm gonna go
you.
right
Should.
now.
I hadn't visited it in a while, and I was like kind of weirded out, but also kind of like, okay, so this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, is it okay to be scared to kind of go visit that website? Because I'm definitely a little scared just to see what's
I
on
mean,
there.
it's like better the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? I mean, I think some folks might be like, oh my god, like I may not use Google products anymore, and then the next day you'll be like, I need to log into my Gmail. But I think that that's the friction there for most folks. Like you don't have an option, and at some point I'm optimistic that we'll create other options for folks and that will actually work in Web3.
We definitely will, and I'm pretty sure that we are on the pioneers of this as well, and we will probably cook up something in the near future for sure.
Let's do
Yeah,
it.
man.
All right.
Absolutely, man. Art, thank you so much for joining, man. Do you have anything else to say for the audience that are listening here?
No, just have a lovely day, folks. Just have a lovely day.